If you've been listening to Pokemon news or just gaming news in general this last week, you might have heard something like this.
Pokemon fans rejoice. The decades-long legal feud between Israeli illusionist Uri Geller and Nintendo is over.
Yes, last week the self-proclaimed mentalist Uri Geller, who unbeknownst to me had a lawsuit dating back almost 20 years ago against Nintendo, which has prevented them from producing Kadabra cards in the Pokemon trading card game, and as a result, Kadabra has also not made any appearances in the Pokemon anime. It seems Mr. Geller filed the lawsuit claiming that Kadabra was based on him. After all, his career has largely revolved around his ability to supposedly bend spoons with his mind, and that's at least part of Kadabra's iconic image. Geller says he was never approached by Nintendo to use his likeness and was upset by this. But just who is Uri Geller, and did he ever have any grounds to back up his claim? It turns out, kind of yes. Uri Geller was born in Tel Aviv back in 1946, before it was officially Israel. Geller claimed that he noticed at a very young age he had supernatural powers. In his early 20s, Geller began performing for small audiences as a nightclub entertainer, and according to Geller, most of his performances were true acts of mentalism, including telepathy and mind reading. And at the time, a lot of people believed him. Even professional parapsychologist Andrea Puharich had genuinely endorsed Geller as an authentic psychic. Now, I'm not going to try and dunk on this man. He's literally made millions of dollars from his stage career, television shows, and books he's written, but many of his critics do point out that everything he does can be recreated by well-known magic tricks. And in November of 2007, he went on record in German magazine Magischwelt as saying, quote, "I'll no longer say that I have supernatural powers. I am an entertainer. I want to do a good show. My entire character has changed." However, he did shortly thereafter walk it back by saying, quote, "That doesn't mean I don't have powers. It means I don't say it's supernatural. I say I'm a mystifier. That's what I said." And even in 2019, Geller wrote an open letter to British Prime Minister Theresa May saying that he would telepathically prevent her from going through with Brexit. Quote, "As much as I admire you, I will stop you telepathically from doing this. And believe me, I am capable of executing it." And I guess to his credit, she didn't go through with it. Over the years, Geller has made many enemies, including his personal arch-nemesis in James Randi, who previously had his own successful career as a magician, but later in his life dedicated himself to debunking those who claim to have psychic powers, going so far as to offer a $1 million prize for anyone who could recreate a feat of psychic ability under a controlled scientific environment. I bring him up because it's literally impossible to search for Uri Geller and not find results for James Randi. That's how much this man hounded Geller. He called him a fraud for decades, to the point that Geller had filed multiple libel lawsuits against him. I mean, just look at James Randi. Dude's a badass. But how does Uri Geller relate to the Pokemon Kadabra, if at all, apart from the ability to seemingly bend spoons with his mind? Well, he actually does have a good case. In English-speaking countries, the evolutionary line is known as Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam. A fun, clever reference to the popular incantation to magic with a history dating back to the 2nd century. But in Japanese, the evolutionary line is Keishi, Jungerer, and Fuden.
Keishi
References Edgar Cayce, an American clairvoyant.
Fuden
Is a Japanese pronunciation of Houdini, arguably the most famous magician of all time, and
Jungerer
is, a Japanese pronunciation of Uri Geller's whole name. What's interesting is how Geller found out about this in the first place. He says that while in Japan in the year 2000, he was doing some Christmas shopping and decided to step into a Pokemon Center, a mostly Japanese exclusive store dedicated to selling Pokemon merch. If you're ever in Japan, I highly recommend you go to one. They're really cool. Geller says that once he entered the store, he was amazed to see the manager come up to him and start bowing, followed shortly by hundreds of children chanting what sounded like his name and holding up Pokemon cards of Kadabra for him to sign. Geller, who seemingly didn't understand much about Pokemon at the time, was probably none too thrilled that in the Team Rocket expansion to the TCG, there was a card called Dark Kadabra, which in Japanese was Evil Jungerer. In his complaint, Geller stated that, quote, "Nintendo turned me into an evil occult Pokemon character. Nintendo stole my identity by using my name and my signature image." Geller was also angered by the star on Kadabra's head, which he associated with the occult, and the 3 lightning bolts on Kadabra's chest, which Geller claimed to believe was a reference to the symbol for the Nazi SS. Now, Geller being an Israeli-born Jew would no doubt find that offensive, and I in no way want to take away from the severity of those claims, but in reality both the star and the quote-unquote lightning bolts are more likely references to Zener cards, which are known to be used to conduct tests for ESP and other psychic abilities. One person holds up the card and hides it from the other, and the other person must tell them which card they're holding. In fact, I'm certain that this is what these symbols reference, since on another Kadabra card released in 1998, the Pokemon is pictured in a room with multiple symbols commonly used in Zener cards on the wall, as well as other well-known magic tricks. Personally, I find it hard to believe that Geller wouldn't recognize this, since in addition to his spoon-bending abilities, he has often done mind-reading tricks using such cards. As a result of Mr. Geller's suit against Nintendo, the production of future Kadabra cards was halted, and Kadabra stopped appearing in the Pokemon anime as well. In a 2008 interview with MASAMITSU HIDAKA, who is the director and storyboard artist for the anime, he said that, quote, "They were not allowed to use Kadabra on a card until an agreement was reached. Nintendo said, put Kadabra aside for now." When asked if the case would ever be settled, he said, quote, "Not anytime soon." Now, you might be thinking, oh, well, if there isn't any more Kadabra cards, then surely there isn't any more Alakazam cards. Nope. They found some clever workarounds to this, like an Abra card released in 2007 that had a move that would allow the player to instantly evolve it into Alakazam, and then later moving on to just making Alakazam playable from your hand through various mechanics in the TCG. Now, I mentioned two other magicians that the Abra evolutionary line references, Edgar Cayce and Harry Houdini. Obviously, those two people are dead, so even if they wanted to, they couldn't file a lawsuit against Nintendo. But are there any other Pokemon that reference human beings? Yes. In the English-speaking world, Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee are not so subtle references to Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee. But even in Japan, Hitmonchan is Ebiwara, which is based on Japanese flyweight boxing champion Hiroyuki Ebihara. And while he passed away in 1991, Hitmonlee in Japan is Sawamura, which is based on Japanese kickboxer Tadashi Sawamura, who had a knockout rate of a whopping 94.6%. Contrast that with Mike Tyson, who only had a knockout rate of 75.86%. Dude was good. And you also have Wobbuffet, who in Japan is Sonans, which is a shortening of the often used punchline by the Japanese comedian Hayashiya Sanpei, who would often say, "Sonansu Oko-san," with his hand in the same formation that Wobbuffet often makes. The point of the story is, while some of the people who inspired the names of Pokemon are dead, some of them aren't, and none of them have gone so far as to sue Nintendo or the Pokemon Company for use of their likenesses. However, finally on November 28th, 2020, Uri Geller tweeted out, quote, "I am truly sorry for what I did 20 years ago. Kids and grown-ups, I am releasing the ban. It's now all up to #Nintendo to bring my #Kadabra #Pokemon card back. It will probably be one of the rarest cards now. Much energy and love to all." Now, you might have noticed the odd wording of "my Kadabra Pokemon card back," and I find it somewhat funny that Geller also linked below the website to his personal museum. But just this week, Uri Geller gave an interview to the Pokemon YouTuber Verlisify, who funnily enough is not immune to his own level of controversy, in which he apologized to the Pokemon fanbase. And to his credit, he said that at the time, he was coming from a place of having a big ego.
At those times I was kind of on an ego trip, I would say.
But then he proceeded to talk about all the famous people he's met and show off the cool things that he's collected in his personal museum.
That's Daredevil comic.
Yeah, there we go.
When I met Stan Lee in New York, he was so impressed by my talent that he put me on the cover of Daredevil.
Now, Uri Geller would no doubt call me just another one of the haters, but it seems to me that he would just like another few moments of fame. In the video, he says he can't possibly meet the demand of people asking him to mail them signed Kadabra cards, but he intends to put a suitcase of them in his museum next to a pair of John Lennon's glasses that he has for some reason.
And I'll put it right here next to John Lennon's glasses, somewhere here on the wall.
Geller says he hopes that this news makes all the children of the world happy with him. However, it seems to me that he wants it both ways. He'd like to be known not as the person who prevented Kadabra from appearing in Pokemon, but only as the person who saved Kadabra. But after 20 years of preventing Kadabra from appearing in multiple Pokemon mediums, I'd like to turn to James Randi, who once said to Uri Geller,
"Well, Mr. Geller, that won't work.
It's too late now. You're stuck with it, Mr. Geller. Lots of luck.
Thank you very much for watching this video on Uri Geller and the Vanishing Kadabra. If you enjoyed this video or learned something new, consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more content. Also, maybe head over to our Discord, where we've actually managed to cultivate a positive space to talk about video games. And if you frequently enjoy our content, maybe consider heading over to our Patreon and tossing us a couple of bucks. But either way, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, have a wonderful day.